may be seated in the presence of the Lord. Amen. Again, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers who have experienced childbirth, and for all the mothers as well who have been instrumental in birthing Christ and birthing positivity in the life of so many. I thank God in my life along the way I have met many who I can bestow the title of mother to, who have been instrumental in getting me to where I am today. And I'm sure many of you can relate. There have been some women who have come in the form of angels as well, in addition to the mother that God has given to you. It's so much so a blessing to know that God has placed such a care in the hearts of man to be willing to sacrifice themselves for someone else. And so with this, I say a happy Mother's Day to all who are allowing themselves to be used as a vessel that has brought forth life, but a vessel that is also maintaining and helping life to become all that it can be for the glory of God. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. We're going to Ecclesiastes 9:11. He says, I returned and saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, neither yet bread to the wise, nor yet riches to the men of understanding, nor yet favor to the men of skill, but time and chances happen to them all. Solomon, in his wisdom, he says, listen, the strongest man doesn't necessarily win all of the battle. The fastest man doesn't necessarily win the race. And the man who is the most skillful doesn't necessarily get the job. But time and chance happens to them all. That means that what happens in every man's situation, that even though things may not be perfect, but however they're not waiting for that perfection, they're in the race. And simply being in, simply positioning himself, simply being able to do is enough that time and chance may happen to every man. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Time and chance happens to every one. Yes, I remember sometime back in my track and field days, for those of you who did not know, I ran track and field for a good part of my life, and I remember this particular track meet, and I always ran the fourth leg. But on this particular track meet, we were going against an opponent that we struggled with in the past. And the reason why, they had very skilled runners, and we were at state at this particular time, and we got to state. And when you're working part of a team, it has nothing to do with whether or not you're the fastest on the team, but it's collectively. How does the team run? And some of my team members were a little concerned because we'd gone up against them before and we had prevailed. But this particular track meet just so happened that as we were running, that they had a pretty terrible handoff. And for those of you who know handoff, you have to hand the baton off to the next person. And it just so happened that someone missed the mark and we got the handoff perfectly. So on this particular track event, we won that track meet. Now, they probably had more skilled, faster runners than us for this particular event. They're probably used to be more coordinated. But in that event, it was our time. Didn't matter what was going on with them, we had to make sure that we were doing everything that we needed to do. Notice how it's more to do with what you do and less to do with what everyone else does. I cannot begin to speak on what it means to be a mother, but I have been a witness to a great mother. And, you know, Sherry is the only mother of all my children. And, and I have been witnessing, you know, first child that we have together that we're going to, you know, I'm going to just do a quick interview. So how does she balance it? You know? How do you make it work? You know, being a mother, being an entrepreneur, being a wife, in what you do. You know, because sometimes when we think about, everyone has their own story. And when you think about life and you can look on someone, you can say, well, you know, I don't necessarily, you know, you may not be able to make sense of what's going on in that person's life, but however, there's much that we can learn from what other people do and how they prioritize. How do you make it work, Sherry? Yeah, you take the mic.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Happy Mother's Day to everyone. Happy Mother's Day. Well, you asked a very interesting question because I'm asked that tons of times. My inbox on social media is packed with that question, and just all my friends. When I finished school, I set out to be an entrepreneur. I'm an occupational therapist, and I cannot have a boss. It's just not going to work for me. So I had to figure out a way to work for myself. So my husband and I, we set up our own company where I contract myself, cut out the middleman, and I get paid more because I don't have an agency over my head. So with that, I was able to make my own schedule. So I usually work during the hours of my kids are at school, so that I can work while, you know, they're occupied. And throughout the day and my week, they have basketball 5 days a week, or is it 6? 6, about 3 hours of practice. Tournaments are usually an hour away. I haven't missed one yet. I haven't missed a practice yet. And my daughter's in dance. She's in swimming. The babies are on one side of town. One of them is on the other side of town, and 3 of them are in the same place. But we make it work. We're a team. And I tried not to do, I used to want to do everything on my own, and I learned to start to leverage friends, family, relatives. And that's really how I've been managing more. But altogether, I just make sure that I don't do too much. And in all of it, I don't want to just identify myself as a mom. I've been taking time to be me. I know someone said to me, so how are you doing it? Like, I've been trying to, just a simple goal of losing weight. Well, I remembered me. I forgot my children at that moment. I remembered I am still Sherry. So I set the goal to lose weight. I did it for like 2-3 weeks. I lost 15 pounds, and I said, I can do this. And I kept doing it. And my children, he knows I cook 3 meals, 1 for the kids, 1 for him, and my separate one because I'm on a specific diet. And how do I do it? Simple and easy recipes. So I don't know what else I should say, but
I want you to talk about as well, you know, how has your relationship with God helped you, you know, in all of this? Because, you know, a lot of times when we set out to do and to be, you know, everything, sometimes we tend to lose focus. Because you imagine for many people, it's like, you know, there's so much going on in the mind. Like, you know, how does your relationship with God help you to balance, to remember Sherry and to remember God and to, you know, because it's the whole person that services the children, that services, you know, the needs of everyone else around you.
Right, that's very true. Like I said, I had to really take a step back and remember that I am my own person, and I'm not just the mom with my 5 kids, the husband to bed. It was more than that. And when I sat back, and I really had to talk with God, and my talks with God is kind of like what you say, pull up a chair and say, God, I'm giving you one-to-one. And I said, you know, God, I need your help. I can't do this by myself. I think I can, I want to, but I'm getting tired, I can't do it. So I really spend time, whether it's in the car driving from a case to another case, or I'm just driving by myself anywhere, you know, at nighttime, washing dishes, whatever it is, that's my alone time with God. I create that time. I don't have the opportunity like, say my husband would, he could come to the church and pray. I don't have that opportunity. So I create moments. When they fall asleep, it's between me and God now. They go to sleep at 9:30, it's my time. Father, thank you for this whole day. Thank you for my children. You know, today I really went through a lot. It was a rough day. You know, I just talk to God as though he's a person in front of me, and I really ask God for help. I'm very sincere. I'm not doing a beautiful prayer where I've heard other people do. I just pray, and God has really been helping me to just balance life.
Amen. Amen. You know, I want to just say this point because we don't realize how much our children are looking up to us. And, you know, my daughter, especially my first one, Sienna, you know, what she's been witnessing is a very strong mother. And Sienna has a very strong personality as well. I think we both relate to that. And she has this need to kind of be bold and to be very aggressive. And I remember I believe something was happening. And it was said to Sienna, you know, this person is going to be the boss because, you know, they're not going to be around. And Sienna says, well, if they're going to be the boss, then I'm the boss of the boss. You know, but see, kids and strength, it's projected, right? And you realize that as a parent in particular, that you have to, whatever you do, that your kids, this is what they're going to emulate. This is what they're going to want to do. This is who they're going to want to be. But you have to make sure that time is there for them, that they know that they're loved. And I'll tell you, and I appreciate you a lot, Sherry, and I celebrate you because I see that with the children, your sacrifice has been without limit. You know, to see from the earliest of the morning to the latest in the night, yet, you know, whether it's at night, sometimes basketball games are done, 10 o'clock in the night, you're there, you're sacrificing, and you're still a businesswoman, you're still doing your wifely duties and meeting the needs of so many others. And I thank God because a lot of it has allowed me to be made accountable as well, because my wife has done such a great job with holding our children accountable in their own schooling. And I get it a lot these days. You know, for those of you who know, I've been in school for the last couple of years as well, and as I'm going through, in fact, I don't know if it was Sienna, I think it was Sienna, and the other kids followed, and I got a 91 in an exam. And you can only imagine the rebuke that I received for getting that 91. She came to me and says, Daddy, where's the other 9 points? But you see, this is what she gets from the parents. You know, this is what she's receiving. And so when we think about Mother's Day, you know, think about, you know, the mothering process doesn't stop at conception, and it doesn't end when birth is given to the child. But it's a process that is continued. And that process goes until the best. When I say the best, I mean life. When I speak of life, I mean to the extent that Christ is fully birthed inside of that child. You know, my mom doesn't speak English, but nevertheless, she could appreciate it. When I met Sherry, I can't say you were going to be my wife when I first met her. But I will say this much, that she prayed for me until Christ was birthed in me. And so we have somewhat of a unique bond. And when I speak of the respect that I have, you know, for her, I speak of it in a very unique way, because I know the sacrifices she was willing to make for me to be who I am today for the glory of God. Praise the Lord. Praise God. So, you know, for all those who are moms, sometimes, you know, again, when I was talking about the situations of not looking at the situation for what it is and looking at everything that's going wrong, what happens sometimes, Sherry, is that when a mom looks at a child, she doesn't all of the time see all that she wants that child to be doing, right? When you think about it as a mom, sometimes, whether it's the child, may not be behaving or performing as well as you would want them to perform, or maybe the child may not be in the best of health in the moment that you would want them to be. How do you deal with that in a situation where, again, I know there are times you've told me that when the kids have suffered some kind of pain, that you have felt pain as well. How do you deal with it?
Wow, that's like 100 questions in one. I mean, for me, I still have children all under 10 and under. So as far as school is concerned, if I see they're struggling in an area, I'll encourage them. Because I know the Caribbean way is usually to tell them what you're doing wrong over and over again, as opposed to telling you what you need to do right and how I can help you. So I had to kind of reprogram my mind from how I grew up and do it with my children and tell them, okay, if you need help with reading, let's read together. And that type of one-on-one and that showing of love and care, I've noticed a tremendous change. We both do it, but I can only speak from when I'm doing it. You see a huge difference, just giving them a hug. Hey, I know that you're having a rough time, let's talk about it. And remembering that they're just a younger human, that they have feelings, they have emotions, and you just tap into it and ask them what's going on, because sometimes it's not just the fact that they had an issue in math. It could be an issue that they had with a kid in school, which is affecting the math, the part that math is affecting them. So it's like so many different areas of their lives that I try to go into when we're having to drive home. We're pretty far, a long drive home, so it's about 45 minutes, so we have a lot to talk about. And I don't just let that 45 minutes be just music. We talking about what's happening in school, who's your best friend, who's this. It's just constant conversations of their life. Mm-hmm. So even now, I mean, they're so open and honest with us that they talk to us about anything, and really just that one-on-one time has been really successful.
Some of the things, like when we think about especially the family, that sometimes the greatest challenges have been that everyone seems to be doing their own thing, especially with the technology. Yeah. You have the children in hand, you have mom on one hand and dad on the other hand, and everyone have their smart device. But it doesn't seem that there's a lot of communication. How would you say, how much importance would you put, for you and I, we've talked a lot about the importance of having dinner together, just being able to have that family time. How much importance would you put on that? What would you say to other mothers who are, themselves building a home, but, life is happening, they're being pulled in so many different directions? How much importance would you put to the dinner elements, being at the dinner table or having dinner together?
Me, I have a huge importance on that. I kind of am an old-fashioned person when it comes to that. My children aren't allowed to watch TV until weekends, and they aren't allowed to be on any electronic device. It doesn't matter what it is, a phone, an iPad, nothing, the whole entire week until the weekend. And I'm very strict with that. Even when they've gone to their friend's house, the parents have called me and said, wow, you're doing such a great job, because I offered him to watch TV, and he said, nope, my mom's I'm gonna get in trouble with my mom. So electronic devices, yes, it keeps our children very quiet, and you get to do what you want to do, but you don't realize what you're doing to their brain. You're causing them to not pay attention more, because their brain is so focused on something in front of them. How many kids these days are wearing glasses because of these electronic devices? It's going up because their eyes are focused on something so small. When they have to look at reality in the world, their eyes can't adjust as quick. So a lot of times we're doing these things to keep our children quiet, but we're really not negative effect. Especially as a therapist, I'm seeing a whole lot of bad effects with it. And in our family, just something we've been doing, and the kids enjoy it. We sit down, we have dinner together, we make dinner together. It's just part of what we're doing. And this morning was so interesting. I was upstairs, and Noah, who's 4, said to me, Mommy, don't come downstairs. We're cooking for you. And they all got up, they cooked on their own, and when I came, I was served with a tray, And I'm looking at myself like, wow, you know, sometimes you're thinking like they're not listening to you or, you know, something. And when something like that happens, you're like, wow, I have such great children. I didn't know they were even listening and they even remember how to cook. So, you know, it's an important thing just to spend time with them, because someone said to me, before you know it, they're in college and they're off. And then that's it, you're back to being you. Who are you again? So I try to enjoy every second of their lives, and I try not to be too busy.
Yeah. You know, you talk about, you know, talking to them, and I think that's a part where, you know, I grew up in the Caribbean as well, and, you know, we know that most Caribbean parents have a pretty good backhand, right? The backhand effect, you know, may work in the Caribbean in that particular time, but it doesn't necessarily work now, because if we look at our children today, they probably have more peer pressure. And that peer pressure, unfortunately, when they're in school, we have no idea what they're doing. You know, it's very different, right? Because in the village that I was growing up, you did something bad in school, my God, you were getting beaten from the teacher, the neighbor. By the time you got home, you got at least 5 beatings. Then your parents, right? That was that accountability, but today we realize that there's really no accountability. If you think about it, most people live pretty much in isolation. Their children go to school, you live on a neighborhood, on a block. If I ask many of you, how many people do you know in your neighborhood? Most people would say, well, I don't know too many people in my neighborhood, let alone people who go to the same school that of your children. So it's very important then, if they're getting a fight in school, when I say a fight, I mean something is trying to pull their attention. What you must do is to have such a relationship with them that they feel comfortable. As you say, that your children are able to speak to you in a way that I feel more comfortable if something is happening. You know, again, more recently we had a scare, Christian, about something a friend said in school, about something to do with, you know, what we're bringing up here. But nevertheless, either he was going to get the information from the friend, or he was going to get it from us. Now, the moment he knew that mom told me, he started to cry, because, well, and this time I was going to be the bad cop, and mom was going to be the more endearing mom. But they have such a close relationship with Sherry that they're able to talk about things that they hear, things that they see, and things that others are doing, and things that they're even tempted to do. And it's very important, and we don't realize, and we discount it sometimes, that part of being a mother is mothering, being nurturing, of being there, being available, and not just looking for a quick solution. Here, take a tablet and go away. You know, when we got to our 3rd child, people said that you guys need to get a TV. And then we're at 5 and we're looking at each other and we say, you know.
And I said to them, we have a TV in every room.
Every single room of the house has a television, right? When we started off. But the truth of it is that our televisions are always off. How much TV do we watch? We don't watch much TV. And the reason for that is because we understand the importance of communicating. We communicate with each other and we communicate with our children. Amen? It's very important if you're going to build a healthy relationship with your family, whether it's husband and wife, or with your children, or with your parents. It's important for you to make that investment to communicate. You imagine how much does it cost to speak? At times, you know, one seems to think that for many people that it's easy to just send a text. I get it. You know, we're busy. But you think about while you're texting, there's someone who is showing your children probably what they should not be doing. And you think about it, who's going to have the greater influence? The one who is showing or the one who is texting? How many children do we know of that Oprah Winfrey has raised? Meaning the television. has raised. Because, yes, we're busy. I get it. My dad worked 3 jobs. I get it that at times we're busy. But here's a reality. That if you develop a bond with your children, I want you to answer this. Let's say I'm a mother, and I'm so busy. I work 2 jobs. In fact, maybe I do a live-in. How do I still maintain a relationship with my child if I'm not there? You know, what can I do to establish a relationship where they feel comfortable talking to me?
That's a really good question. And this is one time I would promote technology. There is FaceTime. And if you're in a live-in job, it's a situation where you have a lot of free time too, and you don't have so many restrictions. So you are able to call your children, call them on a video chat, let them know what you're doing all day, tell them how much you love them, and sit with them, do their homework through FaceTime, through what is it? I don't even know iPhone, I'm sorry. I don't know the Androids, I'm sorry guys. And you know, just utilize your technology. Call them, hey, you know, I'm gonna be here until so-and-so, what are you doing? You know, I mean, just constant communication, because there are times when you're not gonna be around, but you're developing that relationship where they see you actually care. So when oh, mom actually cares, and she knows that at 2 o'clock I'm supposed to be home already, or at 5 o'clock I'm supposed to be back from practice. So I know if I'm doing something wrong, mom knows, because she's gonna call me at this time. You know, so it's a thing like that. I remember back in the day when we had beepers, pagers, remember that? What was the sense of it? I remember I had basketball practice, and my mom would always send me a page, a message. I mean, you had to get a payphone to call back, but just knowing that she sent that message, it kept me in check too. Like, oh, she knows that this time was supposed to be done. All right, guys, basketball practice is over. See you guys later. You know, it keeps them in check, and you don't realize it how much it really helps. So, I mean, we do have busy lives, but at the same time, we have technology to help us in those moments. So utilize it and just keep communicating with them.
No, absolutely. You know, building those relationships is important. Because you never lose it. You know, it never moves away from you. You know, I remember being in college, and I spent a lot of my time, my grandmother did a lot of the raising, and I remember being in college, and every time I was going to do something wrong, and at the time, before I gave my life to the Lord, my conscience was my grandma. Just thinking about, what is my grandmother going to say? I remember one time I had a friend of mine who convinced me to get an earring. And, you know, we got on the bus, actually, we're getting ready to go to the mall. And we get out there, and I'm standing there, and I close my eyes, and I tell you, it's clear as day, and I just saw my grandmother coming across. And I said, oh my God. I said, man, I can't get no earring. Forget that. And as you see, my ears, I've never gotten an earring then, because I thought about it. I said, you know what is my grandmother going to say when I get home and she sees me with an earring, and I know that, you know, again, that she doesn't approve, it's going to break her heart. And so, but however, that relationship was there. When you build that relationship with your children, they never lose it. You know, even when you think that they're not listening, in reality, they are listening. But they want to know that you care. And I think that that level of care, it goes much further than one can imagine, right? So part of it is doing your part. The school's going to do their part. You know, the friends are going to do their part, good or bad. But you, as mom, as dad, as parents, you have a responsibility to do your part. Why? Because think about how much you do care. And sometimes I think it's just not being able to articulate it. How many mothers who are here, let's be honest, that you have stood sometime for a very long time looking at your children while they sleep, and you're just making sure that they're alive? Let's be honest, right? You have stood there. It's because you care, because you love. This is the reason why I bring that up. So you think about something that you care about, what you love so much. Are you willing to just let the enemy grab them out and to be the architect of their destiny? Or are you going to continue to pray them through? They may not be where you want them to be right now, even. But you got to pray and believe that God will get them there for His glory. in Jesus' name. Hallelujah. 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 Praise God. I don't know if you have anything else you'd like to say.
No.
No? Praise God. Amen. Well, thank you, Sherry. I celebrate you, and I celebrate every mother who is here this morning. I thank God for each and every one of you. I know it's a little different than a sermon, but I believe sometimes, the practical is very important. How do I do this? And sometimes we lose sight of what's important. We lose sight of the sacrifices. And sometimes we don't look at the bad things of life, and we don't consider that you're here because of a sacrifice. You think about how many, listen, I get it all the time from people who say, my mom is this, and my mom is that, and my mom is the next thing. And I'll tell you, a great part of my life, I had trouble understanding the value, my mother's value. I did not grow up with my mom. In a lot of cases, I'd say that I had a lot of resentment growing up. And it first dawned on me, I remember, I think I was in my 5th grade graduation. And when I got to 5th grade graduation, I realized that everyone was there and their mothers were there, and I looked out in the audience and my mother was not. And I became such a bitter, I was so bitter, I was so angry. I was angry with my mom that she was not there. I hadn't spoken to her, because of circumstances that I didn't learn about until I got very much so older. And I went through life and I was bitter, I was kind of angry about the whole thing, and one day, my grandmother sat me down and she says, what is your feeling towards your mother? And my grandmother, I could share anything with her, and I told her, I said, I don't know if I really care for her too much, because I feel that she abandoned me, I've been here and I don't hear from her, and I don't really know what's going on. And she says, I'll tell you in life that you don't find too many women who are as strong as your mother. And I asked her, what do you mean? And I told her I could speak very plainly with my grandmother. She says, your mother made the decision that is probably one of the hardest decisions for any mother to make. She made the decision to give you a fighting chance. She gave you up when you were young because she could not afford to keep you. But it was her sacrifice that made it possible for you to be here. She says, as long as you have breath in you, you have to find something to do to show gratitude to your mother. I'll tell you, after that conversation, everything changed for me in my understanding. Before such time, I never had a desire to call my mom. In fact, I didn't even know, I can honestly say I didn't even know her real name, in a sense. And at the time I was going into college, and I remember having that talk with my mom, and I got to college. And it was the first time after I'd given my life to the Lord as well, I started the process of filing for her. I said, God, I can only imagine the sacrifice that this woman had to make in order for me to be here. I may not have seen it every single day of my life. It may not have been the perfect situation to be in. I may not have been born in a perfect situation where my mother and father were married. In fact, I was born out of a sinful affair. But nevertheless, because of her sacrifice, I had a fighting chance. I had a fighting chance to be much more than what one would perceive, than the sin that they committed. I had a fighting chance to be a redemption for their character, for the blemish that was on their life and their own shortcomings, that because of her sacrifice, I had a fighting chance. And so as a result of that, I look on motherhood as something that is to be celebrated. Of course, not just one day of the year, but it's something that is to be appreciated and celebrated truly, because you imagine how many children are not here because they were not given a fighting chance. They were not given the opportunity. Remember we said chance and time happens to every man. But you have to be alive to have that opportunity. And the mere fact that you are here means that there was a mother who was willing to sacrifice her body for you to be here. Whether she was a good mother in the eyes of someone else, a good friend, or whatever she was, the reality of it is she made the sacrifice. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
And as a result, you can say, now what I do with it is not up to my mother. Who I become now is not up to my mother. She gave me the opportunity. Now it's up to me to decide who I'm going to be and what I'm going to become. It's up to you to decide for yourself now. But however, one cannot reject the sacrifice that mom made in order for you to be here. Praise the Lord.
Praise the Lord.
Praise God. Without further ado, I'm going to hand it over because I know that they've been working very much so tirelessly. In fact, they've been practicing to the wee hours of the night to put this performance together for you today, and I pray that you will find it as a treat, in fact, a reward for all of that you mean to your children. And so I'm going to call up Jitty, and she's going to take it from here.